Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You are listening to episode number 192. I'm Victoria Gallagher, Law of Attraction hypnotist and number one bestselling author of Practical Law of Attraction. Align yourself with the manifesting conditions and successfully attract your desires. I'm also the founder of hiptalk.com and HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that app from the app stores. And today I have a very special guest with me, Kimberly Maska. Having spent years in the corporate world in a job that sucked her soul dry, Kimberly Maska has now made it her passion and purpose to help people create a prosperous life with their unique genius. Known as an enlightened business master, she uses 20 years of business development experience, including 8 years on Wall Street, to show people how to shift their vibration around money so that they can have an energy exchange of love and money for their gifts. It is her sole purpose to help 5,000 spiritual entrepreneurs to step into their new role as spiritual leader in the next 5 years. And you can discover more about her in her 2 international best-selling books, Are You a Spiritual Entrepreneur? And Chaos, a Wake-Up Call for Lightworkers. And she can also be found on her website at kimberlymaska.com. And today, Kimberly is going to be sharing some of her insights on how poverty is a mental disease and how to transmute our beliefs and create prosperity. Welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Thank you for having me. Very excited. Anytime I get to talk about money, it's fun.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited about today's conversation with you because I just think that, I've been just doing a lot of like just peeking into forums and Facebook groups and, just money, money, money. I mean, people just are so caught up on money. I mean, like I didn't think people actually had this belief anymore about money is the root of all evils. But literally somebody mentioned this in, in a YouTube comment that I was reading about. And I chimed in there and oh my goodness, when you step out of this bubble and you see other people's limiting beliefs, it's crazy. So I am really, really excited to dive into this. So let's just kind of chat a little bit about like where you got your start and, tell us just a, little history on
Yeah.
how you got into this.
So this was like, of course, I think with most of us, like not in our plan at all. That's not what we were supposed to be doing. And so my career actually started out in the whole Wall Street world. And so I went down that path. I was doing like mortgage-backed securities, which is also something I was not a finance major. I was a psychology major. And I was like, how did I end up here? But as the universe has a plan for us, there's a series of events that takes us down that path. And so I ended up doing that kind of work and ended up on Wall Street and actually created a $165 million company with 8 other partners. And it was fun, but man, was there this huge realization that like, what am I doing? Like there was this moment of like, what in the world is going on? Like my hair was falling out, like I was drinking too much, I was eating too much, I was just randomly spending money just because I was miserable. So I can tell you for sure money does not make you happy. However, when you're in alignment with how you create it, it can be a whole different feeling and vibration, which is why I think I'm so like dedicated to that for people understanding, because so many people who don't have money or like what's the right word? It's not that they don't have it, but maybe there's resistance or they're very much conditioned to see money in a certain way. That group of people just thinks like either the money is great or the money is bad. Like money is either going to change my life or it's horrible and I don't want it. And it doesn't have to be any of those things. And so that's why I've kind of dedicated myself to doing this. But it's just amazing how our path happens. There's no sometimes rhyme or reason when we first see it, like we're too close to it till we step back and we're like, oh wow. But I also realized that one of my intuitive gifts is to see someone's business. Like I can see it lay out in front of me when someone's talking to me about what they do, and I can see the holes and I can see what's working. And I didn't understand that that was a gift, but that's actually what got me to Wall Street in hindsight. And so I'm like, oh, that's how that all works. So as I went through my awakening and finding my path and going to different, retreats and things, I was meeting all of these incredible healers that were really struggling financially. And I'm like, but why? What you do is amazing. Like, why don't you just build a business? And I realized that that was a unique thing for me to say, let's just build a business because I can see it easily. And so that's kind of how I ended up marrying like all that expertise that I obtained over the years, plus like my intuitive gift that I was discovering. Now I get it, but I didn't even quite get it then. I was now able to marry that and show the people who are in the highest vibration, who should have the abundance, who can do amazing things with abundance. Now I can show those people how to create that prosperous life instead of showing the other people who don't get it how to do it like I was in my Wall Street years. And so it's been really such a gift to be able to take all that knowledge and be able to use it for the right, I'll say for the good, for the right purpose, for the right vibration of what is supposed to happen.
I love your story, Kimberly, so much. And I think it's a couple key points are that, that gift that you have, and not just for you, but I'm sure it's true for your clients as well. And is that, I mean, usually your gifts, you don't even realize that that is a gift because it is something that comes so natural to you, and it just feels like so common. Like it a lot of times, because hypnosis and law of attraction, it comes so common to me. It's just like, this is common sense, like everyone should know this already, but they don't.
Yeah.
And so that is such a key point that you mentioned. Also, it was kind of fun. We both come from that finance background, and we both sort of stumbled upon this whole spiritual entrepreneurship by like kind of having that realization that like, yeah, it's one thing to create a lot of money, but it's another thing to create a lot of money doing something that you're passionate about. And I think that that is really the key, because eventually you can make a lot of money and then you can just be miserable and burn yourself out.
Yeah.
So that's, really an amazing story. So tell us a little bit about the poverty being a mental disease. I love that. I don't have the verbiage on how I would explain that, but I would love to hear your explanation on why that is a mental disease.
Sure. And it's such a trigger like this, and which is actually one of my like gene key things where I actually end up triggering people to get them to shift into a new level of things. So it's interesting to see, but that's a huge trigger for people when I say that.
I
like,
can
no,
imagine.
it's not, right? It's this and it's that and it's this thing and that thing and this social thing and that political thing. I'm like, no. So we have to dial it back to that we create our reality. So you teach a law of attraction. If we know that what we attract is based on who we are, where we're vibrating, what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're putting out there, then we know that we create our reality. So as spiritual beings, we can't deny that. So it has to start there. So if someone's not awake in their consciousness process of awakening to understand that they create the reality, then they get really angry with me and it makes no sense. But once your consciousness is opened up a bit and you realize that you do create your reality, like that you really are this powerful creator, then you actually can't deny the statement that poverty is a mental disease, because it's coming from our thoughts, which is what creates our vibration. And so when we are thinking all of these and feeling all of these scarcity thoughts and feelings around money, we're just repelling it. We're just saying, I don't want it. Like every time a spiritual entrepreneur says, well, I don't need that much. I don't need that much money. I'm like, first of all, that's a lie, because to be at our best version, we have to have abundance and prosperity flowing around us. So I'm like, first, that's a lie. And then second, like all you're doing by saying that is repelling it. So you're just fulfilling your own prophecy by saying, I don't need it. I don't want it, what have you. And then of course it's never going to show up and you're always going to be struggling. But we have to shift that, because to be in our highest vibration and our highest level of consciousness is our goal on this planet, right? This whole game that we're playing is like, how do we be at our best version of us? And to do that, we can't be worrying about something like money. And so it becomes, it just comes back to our thoughts and what do we believe? What are our beliefs that we have to untangle so that we can actually create a new higher vibration belief system around money?
I love that. And yeah, in order to really become all that you can be, you need money. I mean, you really, and I agree with you. You're lying to yourself if you say that you don't need money, and you're thinking very, very small. You're really, this is kind of taken from a long time ago guest, the laughing billionaire. And he said basically that if you say you don't need a lot of money, you're being selfish. You're actually being selfish because you're really thinking about only yourself. You're not thinking bigger and how you can contribute to the world, because you do have a lot to contribute. So I really love that. And I'm sorry if that triggers anybody here
Right.
on this listening into this podcast, but it's absolutely true that we're in control of our thoughts. And so if we choose to continue to create poverty, then that is kind of a mental disease.
Absolutely. And I love that the laughing billionaire said that, because I say that all the time. So one of my things on my webinars and master classes and everything I do is that you're being selfish if you aren't earning six figures as a spiritual coach. Like if you're to call yourself a spiritual coach or a spiritual leader or spiritual entrepreneur, whatever word you want to use, I'm like, but if you're stepping out and you're not earning at least six figures, you're being totally selfish, because that means you're not serving. So that means because your business is a vehicle to serve. So your business is a reflection of how you're helping your what I call your soul tribe. And so if you're not helping that many people, then you're going to be struggling. And the more people you help, the more prosperity you create. And so, yes, I love that I've never heard anyone else say that. So that's really cool to hear that. I'm gonna have to look him up now.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, very, very cool. I think his name was Bijan something. It was an interesting name. But, so getting into, so what would you say to the person that that's honest with themselves and say, okay, I really do want to make that six figures. And I want to, be able to change my dialogue or whatever, but I can't figure out. So what are some of those beliefs that person has? Like, what are some of the common beliefs that you hear about when it comes to, attracting more money into their business?
Yeah. It's really interesting. So we have the basic common beliefs, like you were talking about earlier, money's evil, or money changes people, or it could be more subtle things, even where someone will see, or they'll talk about the rich and they'll say, oh, well, they're greedy, or they must have done something wrong to get the money. Like the amount of limiting beliefs that come around money, it blows me away, actually. And because this is what I do with all of my clients, because the one thing I discovered is I'm showing spiritual coaches how to create their six-figure business. And I would see people that would soar and do really well. And then I see people like really struggle. And one of the biggest factors in that struggle was their money beliefs, because they weren't allowing themselves to receive money. So I've created a whole process now where we spend a ton of time uncovering all those money beliefs and going deep into what they are, because we have to transmute and then transcend those beliefs. Because if you don't do that, you will always be repelling the money away. So each person's unique, but it could be something as simple as, oh, I can't have that, or that's too much. Like it's the simplest words. It doesn't even have to be some big belief like money is evil. It just the subtle things that people are saying, which means that's what they're thinking. That's their beliefs. Going back to that poverty is a mental disease. It could be just the smallest inkling that puts them in a vibration that repels the money. And so it's working through all of that. And it takes some inner work for sure. This is not something you just say, oh, I want to make some money. I tell my clients, I'm like, look, prosperity. And for me, prosperity is mind flow of like mind, body, and spirit, which includes money, because to me is, money's energy. It's spiritual. It's not a physical thing. It's a very spiritual thing. It's energy created by source as part of our 3D world. So yes, we can get really grounded into that 3D world and do those, I don't know, that low vibrational stuff with money, but it's really is energy, and we get to imbue it with whatever energy that we want. And so when we're looking at it as energy, like, how could you put like false beliefs on energy? And so we have to we have to look at it for what it really is. And when we can begin to see it as what it is as energy, the beliefs begin to kind of fall away. But there is a moment where, like I tell my clients, I'm like, I will say to you over and over, it's energy. I will say to you over and over that it is divine substance, that you can call it in, that it comes from you, not to you. I can tell you all of that. And intellectually, you will nod your head and go, oh yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that. But there will be a moment when their consciousness shifts and they get it. And I don't know when that moment is for each person, because they have their own lessons to learn. But it's just the understanding that I was going back around to where I kind of started, was that prosperity being this flow of mind, body, and spirit, and that it's energy, all of it, is that prosperity is a way of life. So it's not like I just want to create some money. Prosperity is how you live. So if you want to be prosperous, you need to be working on that all the time. You need to be working on your money beliefs constantly. I have my clients tithe. And so tithing, traditionally people would say, oh, you're giving it to a church. But how I look at it is that you take your income, take 10%, because tithe is 10%. So you take 10%, which really at the end of the day isn't that much money. You take 10% and you just give it away to where you're being spiritually fed. Who's inspiring you? What podcast have you listened to that someone inspired you? Or what video did you see on YouTube where you're like, well, that was great information? Tithe to those people so that we can keep them going. Because when you tithe to someone who has a podcast or a YouTube channel, like they have it all set up for people to donate to them. But I know when I tithe, they're just like blown away, because they're like, oh my God, they're getting bigger amounts. Like they're getting a little chunk of money, and they're blown away, and it allows them to continue with their message. So when we give, we allow the receiving to come in. But the biggest part of giving, the tithing part, is that it puts you in a state of prosperity consciousness, because you have to understand and know that the money will flow back to you if you give it away. If you're like hanging on to it, being like, I can't tithe, I don't know, then there's so many issues there. But when you go to give money away, it's just this ease. And it flows, and there's just such confidence that you know that God, source, infinite intelligence has your back and will deliver abundance back to you, because you're meant to thrive. So there's so many pieces to that. I know I kind of like went off on a little tangent, but it's like, it's not as simple as like, what are the beliefs and how do we take care of them? It's like, it's such a multi-layered process.
And I think that's why this can be a little bit complex for some people, because it is multi-layered. And I do love what you're talking about when it comes to tithing. I recently read this book, it was about a year ago, by her name's Catherine Ponderous. And it talks about, I'm not sure if I pronounced the last name right.
But it's Catherine Ponders. Yep.
Okay. And, yep. She's very specifically talked exactly like what you're talking about in there as far as the tithing goes. And it's not just to churches and religious organizations, but like you said, it's, you tithe to where you are receiving your inspiration, because really it does make a lot of sense that you would want to give back. So number one, I like that you said that. And then number two, when you tithe, it's letting the universe or your subconscious know that, if you're able to give money that freely, then that means you have money. So you're opening up that reservoir of abundance, and that does come back to you, as long as you're not doing it just to get a return. Right. It's not like, okay, I'm going to invest this 10% and I'm demanding my 10 times my money back. It doesn't work like that. You have to do it from your heart.
I had a client the other day. She's like, well, I tithe, but I didn't see anything happen. And I'm like, That's not the point. That's not what we're talking about. I'm like, it will come back to you, but you have to relax into it. And that your intention isn't to give so you can receive. I'm like, it's about putting you in a state of prosperity consciousness, because
Yeah,
you can't be in that prosperity consciousness and give money away freely. You're going to like hold on to it tight. So it's really just putting you in that, like you said, that telling your subconscious that of course it's going to come back. I have it. It's part of my birthright. It's there. It's energy, which means it's always flowing. And if I'm open to receiving, it's going to flow from me, not to me, right? It's coming from who I am, and then it'll just show up.
exactly. And it's so subtle too, because it doesn't come back to you in the same way or in this, in any particular time frame, but it does come back. It just
Yeah.
circulates. You put it over there, and then all of a sudden, I mean, it doesn't fall from the sky, but it comes, all of a sudden I got this order out of the blue, or I got this new client out of the blue, or, oh my God, like I got this unexpected check in the mail that, was something maybe that was out there already, but this just sort of shakes up that, that
Yeah.
energy and shifts it so that you're in a receptive receiving place. So I love that. That's a great, great concept.
Yeah.
Um, so you talk about purpose to prosperity. And so I'd love to dive in and find out a little bit more about what you mean by that. I think I
Yeah.
know, but I'd love to.
I think you know too. But yeah, because people that when our consciousness isn't quite as open and awake, we're in that 3D and we're like, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. I'm going to get this job and this education. I'm going to make this money. And we start seeing, we go after money in this very 3D way. And so we have to step back from that and we have to find our purpose. Like, who are we? One thing that I noticed with my clients as they were stepping out as a spiritual coach, that the ones who struggled the most didn't know who they were. Like, they had this idea and they could even have this gift. They could even be these amazing channels, right? They could be these incredible channels, or like, I channel this incredible information, but then who are they? And because they didn't know who they were, there would be a struggle in the stepping out. So one of the things like we really focus on is like, who is this person that's stepping out? Who are you? Because once you know you and you begin to understand how you operate best, and then what your real purpose is, then everything lines up and then everything flows and then you can create prosperity. But if you're, working that day job that you can't stand, prosperity is going to elude you. So it's like, who are you? And I always see too that the truth of who you are is what your clients are actually buying, no matter what you're selling, but especially for spiritual coaches. But they're connecting with the truth of who you are. So if you don't know who you are and you aren't doing the inner work to make sure that you are a whole integrated being, that you're working through your shadows and, trying to reach for the light at all the time, that like, if you're not doing that constantly, this idea of prosperity can't fully take hold with you. So you've got to be able to discover your purpose and the truth of who you are, which is an ongoing process. It's not we just find it one day, we're like, got it. It's an ongoing thing, but be on that path. And that path will lead you to your prosperity.
I love that. And yeah, it is, you have to be true. You have to be in integrity. You have to be authentic, because like you can't hide from that. And I think so many people think that they can just hide from the truth, or they can hide out and do things that they're not really in alignment with. And they're just doing that, either like to make money or because they think that they have to, or, even people that are still stuck working their 9 to 5 job. There's like such a, mix of emotions when you're doing that, and you're, not branching into who you are really, really meant to be. I truly believe that if you're honest with yourself and you take those risks and you allow yourself to be who you really are, the money will ultimately follow.
It always does. It's amazing to me to see it happen, especially with my clients and with myself. It's like, it is amazing how it just shows up for you. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you say that money is our greatest spiritual test. So how would you say it's a spiritual test?
Well, this goes back to seeing it. How do we see it? Do we see it as this 3D thing, or do we understand and know in every cell of our body that it's energy, and that we get to imbue that energy with our own essence? And so what happens is, in the spiritual world, we get this, we get hung up on, we'll call it the super rich. We all know who we're talking about, right? So the people who control everything. And so because of this control pattern that's happened, and it's tied to money, that the spiritual people then like begin to shun money. And they're like, oh, going back to the, I don't need that much, or we shouldn't buy this thing, or we shouldn't buy that thing. And they get very, it's funny because it actually grounds them more in the 3D. The very thing they're trying to do, which is be 5D beings, the very thing that they're doing when they start looking at money as this 3D thing is like really making it real. It's not really real. Like, we got to remember, this reality that we're in is what we create. How real is it? We don't really know that answer, right? We don't know. Is it a true matrix? Is it a hologram? Is it? We don't really know. But we know that if we are conscious creators and we can call in via law of attraction and our own thoughts, if we can create, then we know it's not as real as we think it is. So if we're going to call ourselves spiritual beings and say that we're creators of our reality, then you cannot turn around and look at money as a 3D thing and be like, money. Like, it just you've completely contradicted what your desire is. Like, talk about like contrast. You've just brought in so much contrast because you're like, I'm spiritual and I'm 5D and I want to be here, but ooh, money. I'm like, you just completely went against the whole thing. So you've got to be able to see it as this 5D thing, to know that it's energy, to know that you can create it, to know that all that stuff out there, including that infrastructure that controls all sorts of things that we don't like, right? There's the judgment of like, all of that that's there, that contrast is there to expand your consciousness. So you have to look at all that as an expansion of your consciousness and not point fingers at it. And that's where most spiritual people, I'm going to use the word fail, which is another big trigger, but they do. They're missing the mark on understanding that. So the money, and especially because in this 3D world, we need money. It is part of the reality that we need it to engage to get things that we need. And so then we fall into the scarcity because we don't have enough. We want this, and there's not enough in the bank account. And like, you're just making it more real. You're forgetting that you are powerful, like limitless beings that can create whatever you want. And so that money piece is the thing that just trips them up over and over and over. And I'm like, you can't stand there and tell me that money's bad, or that you don't need enough money, or that money is going to create all of these issues, or look at those people with money. You can't stand there and tell me any of that and call yourself a spiritual leader. You can't do that. It's a complete contradiction.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I mean, there's so much drama and negativity that gets created around money, and including and I always say that too, when you're a spiritual leader and yet you're, somehow deeming this money thing as a bad thing. I mean, it's very contradictory.
Yeah.
And like, all of these things are in our experience. We call them into our experience, all of it. Even though we might all be having a shared experience, we're still I believe, that we're all calling these experiences up for us to learn and grow from as spiritual beings having a human experience. And that's the thing, is like, all of the human things, I mean, we're meant for us to have these human experiences while we're here. I mean, why else would we be here? So
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's very interesting. So I always like to ask my guests, if they have like any tools or tips or techniques that somebody could, take away from the show to, just what would be the very first step that a person could take if they're, they know that they're on this spiritual entrepreneurial path. They know down deep inside that they want to break free and have unlimited abundance available to them, but they just don't know, like, where do I start?
Yeah. So I created a little process called the alchemy of emotion that I'll share. And it all starts with awareness, because what's really interesting is that so many of our beliefs, we don't even know that they're there. They're just so ingrained in us, or they came from our parents, or it's an ancestral thing, or what have you. Like you don't even get that it's there until you have awareness. So it's about having the awareness first. So we have to start to pay attention to our words, right? This all goes back to doing the inner work. Pay attention. What are your thoughts? So when you go to pay for something, are you like, oh, that's too expensive, which is silly, right? Oh, that's too much energy. Right? So it's like when you start replacing the word money with energy, you start to realize like how silly it is, the things that we're saying, right? There's not enough energy. I'm like, no, it's everywhere. So we start to, when you can replace it, you start to see the folly in what you're thinking and saying. So it's like first having that awareness. What does it feel like when you spend money? What does it feel like when you receive money? A lot of people aren't open to receiving it. I just was actually talking with a client. We were talking about this tithing piece, and she tried to tithe to a couple of people and they wouldn't take the money. So like, are you even open to receiving? Does it make you uncomfortable? And like, even as simple as a compliment, does that make you uncomfortable? Because the universe does not differentiate between money and other energy. It's all energy. So if you're repelling compliments and someone says, oh, you're so beautiful, or you're so wonderful, and they're like, no, I'm really not, or like, and you start doing that, the universe doesn't know the difference between what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to. It's energy. You're like, oh, they're just repelling stuff away. Okay, don't give them any more of that. So you have to have this awareness, like, how does it feel like to receive? Is it exciting? What does it feel like to give? Are you excited? Or are you terrified? Are you sitting in scarcity? And so when you have this feeling of scarcity that comes in, maybe it's looking at your bank account. We all know that feeling. You open up an account, like your stomach drops. Maybe there's not as much in there as you thought, or you get a bill that you weren't expecting, whatever that is. Your body reacts to that before you even have an awareness of what you've looked at. Right? We all feel it. We all feel it somewhere. We feel that the whoosh somewhere. For me, it's like upper gut. For other people, it could be your heart's pounding, like someone's sitting on your chest. Like, where do you feel it? That's the first thing, is the awareness. Where am I feeling it? And then the alchemy of emotion process is be able to transmute that energy, because all that energy, that contrast, is there to expand our consciousness. So we have to go, okay, this is my lesson for money. This is what I'm supposed to expand my consciousness on so that I can have more prosperity in my life. So you have the first awareness of where are you feeling it in your body, just so that you can begin to, I call it catching it before you have the reaction, right? Because if you pay enough attention, your body feels it, and then we say something or we do something. So if you can feel it in your body before you react, you can start to catch it early. So you begin to have this awareness so that you can catch it. And then when you have the awareness of the contrast, and right now we're talking about money. So say you open up your account and, I don't know, got overdrawn or something. Take that moment and actually acknowledge that your higher self brought this situation to you so that you can expand. Like your human self and your higher self said, you know what, this person really needs, they need this so that they can expand their consciousness here. So that's why it's there. That's why all this contrast is here, is for us to expand. So you have the awareness of where it is in your body. Then you have the awareness that your higher self brought it to you, and then give it some gratitude. You're like, how cool that I'm having this experience, because it's here to help me expand the consciousness of this human here on this planet. Like, how amazing is that? Because when we can start to see how amazing it is, then we no longer freak out about it. We're like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm supposed to expand from this. So you have the awareness, you give some gratitude, you're like, wow, I'm ready to expand. And then I also like to look at the folly in it, because when we realize that we create our reality, and that I brought that in so that I can have some contrast, so I can expand my consciousness in this reality that is probably not what we think it is anyways, then like, how silly that I got upset about that. How silly that I freaked out about this. And it's just, you've got to find the folly in it so that you can transmute that energy. You got to transmute it from being like, to like, oh my God, how silly is this? Like, I'm upset about energy of this thing that I created because it's my consciousness that I get to expand from. I'm like, whoa, what happened? So you have fun with it. You can have more fun with it instead of panicking.
Well, it's like, I don't know. I just came up with a silly analogy, but it's like putting on blue lipstick and then looking in the mirror and saying, ooh, that person's wearing blue lipstick, but then, you got to like take a look and like realize, oh, I'm the one that put that blue lipstick on. I don't know. That was just kind of a silly little
good analogy.
But yeah, but we are the creators. We may not always be aware that we are creating. And I think that's ultimately what it comes back down to always is just, I love just the replacing the term money with the term energy. I think that really that would be a great technique, for somebody to take away from this is just anytime you hear yourself talking about money or complaining about money, or even, praising money, whatever it is, just change that to energy because that's what money is. And, and I think it makes it a little easier to discuss, and it makes it a little easier to digest and to change because energy is kind of an inanimate thing. And so I love this. I love this conversation. And so to ultimately wrap up from here, you are also offering our listeners a free download for a spiritual entrepreneur book. Can you tell them a little bit about
Sure.
this?
Yeah, no, it's my Are You a Spiritual Entrepreneur book. And it's really about the mindset shift. So it's really funny because some people read it and they're like, where's all the techniques? And I'm like, you have to understand, you have to become who you need to become before I teach you how to run ads and be on YouTube or Facebook, right? Like all that stuff. Like people come to me, they're like, just show me how to do it. I'm like, that's not how this works. Who's the person doing it? So the book is really about the internal shifts about what you need to do and how you need to see things in these aha moments so that you can have the business that you want. So it's the 6 shifts that my successful spiritual coaching clients use to create their 6-figure business, because you have to get this first. You have to know this piece of it. And then I talk about all these amazing, spiritual entrepreneurs that have succeeded so that you have some inspiration. You can be like, oh my gosh, it can be done. And I show you consistently different people who've been through my programs. You're like, they made it happen. Like, how cool. Like, use that as inspiration and pay attention to the shifts, because the shifts all that has to come from you. If you want to be a spiritual coach and your business is not where you want it to be, has nothing to do with your Facebook ad didn't work or your Google ad didn't work. It has nothing to do with that, because we are creators. So you are creating your business. So if your business isn't where you want it to be, you have to start within. And that is the most important thing I teach. And I spend a ton of time on that with my clients, because it does not matter all the marketing stuff. It just doesn't matter. It's irrelevant actually until you get you ready to step into the role of spiritual coach.
You know what? That is so refreshing because the words that I heard in my own words were you manifest from who you are. So stop trying to figure out the how of all this marketing stuff. Once you are in alignment with having a successful, thriving 6-figure business, then all of that stuff will show up. The how will show up. You'll be in a better place because, trust me, I've been in, certain situations where, I've had limits that I've tried to break through, and it's like, okay, this didn't work. Let me try another way. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try another way. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try another way. And really, that is just trying the same thing over and over again and expecting another result. That's never going to work. You have to go within. You've got to get yourself right and align yourself with, being an abundant spiritual entrepreneur, making a 6-figure or 7-figure or 8-figure or whatever level you're working on getting to. And so I really, really appreciate your content and really appreciate your time and sharing all of this valuable insight with us today. And so we're going to have everything in the show notes, but to get that book, it's going to be in Kimberly Maska's Kimberly is Maska.
Maska.
Kimberly Maska, spiritualbiz.com/AYASE free download. And you can remember that because it's Are You a Spiritual Entrepreneur? Those 5 it's an acronym
Yeah.
for Are You a Spiritual Entrepreneur? So go to Kimberly Maska spiritualbiz.com/AYASE free download. And you can get that free download, and that's going to help you to start to do this, breakthrough and on your internal belief system that you must do in order to break free to the next level. So thank you so much for coming on our show today. And thank you, listeners, for listening and tuning into the Power of Your Mind podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.